Well, happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, October the 22nd, the 295th day of the year. There are 71 days left in the year 2024, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Tom. Well, voting is the major issue in front of the public as we head toward November the 5th. It's hard for me to believe that there are many young people who don't feel the need to vote. Getting to vote has always been a privilege for me. There are young black men who took offense at President Obama because he challenged them in a manner they aren't used to being challenged. They obviously did not play football in the era of the 60s, 70s, and 80s when an insult from your coach was considered motivation. Perhaps a little voting history will help. If we go back in time, we'll learn that in the beginning, only tax-paying property owners, white tax-paying property owners, and male were the only ones that could vote. African American men gained the constitutionally guaranteed right to vote in 1870 with the ratification of the 15th Amendment, but the white supremacist factions of the South soon killed that right almost completely by 1890. It would not be until 1965 that Congress would enable the 15th Amendment through the Voting Rights Act. Women, black or white, did not have the right to cast a ballot outside of some oddball frontier territory until 1920 under the 19th Amendment of the Constitution. People between the ages of 18 and 20 were added to the voting mix in 1971. My dad was made to take a poll tax test to vote. You know, easy questions like how many bubbles of water are there in the ocean, or some question like that. According to the people who administered the test, he failed. It was a way to keep people, in particular, black men, from voting. Now they say they won't vote anyway. But like many people in his generation, he and others like him would not accept failure. He went back. My dad went back, took the test again, and passed. My parents reneged on their opportunity to vote. When you're in tune with history, things seem to become clearer. Voting is your right. People died for that right. I hope that the young people out there will vote. You have a chance to make a difference. When you say you don't like either of the candidates, to me, that's a cop-out. You have an obligation to vote. You vote if not just for you. You vote if not just for you, because that's selfish. You vote for many people beyond yourself. Some say, well, what about voter fraud? Well, there have been two factors conspired to make voting fraud pretty much a thing of the past. Civil servant workers and administrators running the show, and the advent of mechanical voting machines. This election gives you a chance to make history, but none of that matters if you let others make the decision for you. Okay, our G-List guest today is Dr. Kimberly Patton. In honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Kimberly Leslie-Patton as our G-List guest. As a breast cancer thriver, Dr. Leslie-Patton will share her powerful story, discuss the key things to watch for, and offer invaluable advice on how to advocate for yourself and others. Don't miss this important and inspiring conversation. We look forward to it. Our show today, of course, is sponsored by the Best Girl consulting firm, so let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl customizes a solution that fits your needs. So let's go to our roundtable regulars, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Good morning, Michael Walker.
Good
I
morning
took
to
you
you,
this
G.
time.
Yeah, I got a chance to start today. I like that.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. I want to ask you about something, but go ahead and tell us what you got.
Well, there's a couple things out here, but one thing I think I'll start with is there was a survey done by the American Association of University Professors, and it found that 29% of Alabama professors who responded say they have applied for jobs outside of the state. Another one said, I'm about to leave the school and move to a position in a new blue state due to the overall political climate in Alabama. He went on to say, I conduct government funded research and I'm taking my grants with me,
Mm,
costing the schools hundreds of thousands of dollars.
mm,
Many of the people that were surveyed, and according to the anti DEI legislation, say that the political climate in the state of Alabama is making it basically very difficult to educate students. One even mentioned that um, an art teacher can no longer hang artwork that shows diversity on the wall.
that's pretty bad.
I mean, that's just going very, very far. You know, multiple multiple respondents said that they would not recommend their school to other faculties from other parts of the country. And this right now is going throughout the schools in the South because of the anti DEI law and what it all encompasses. And one person said it just makes it very difficult to educate students now on diversity and the importance of having diversity.
You know what's interesting about that? I remember when DEI first started. All of the big corporations, all the CEOs were praising it. All of them were talking about how it was great and how it help the different companies, because they'd have diverse opinions and so on and so forth. And I guess that just kind of went away after we got into that
Yeah,
political theater.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
okay. Uh, Go ahead, Michael. You done?
I have another one I share with you, and this is for everybody in our viewing and listening audience, and we all have done this. Imagine going looking for a new car, and it doesn't have to be a brand new car, it can be a previously owned car, but it's new to you. And the normal thing is to take the car for a test drive, you know? Well, imagine you go and look for a truck and you see one that you're interested in, you take it for a test drive, and you get pulled over by the police and given a $250 fine for not having the proper tag on, a dealer tag. That happened to a gentleman in Texas. And what's so unfortunate about this, the reason why he was looking for a new vehicle is because his son had been involved in an automobile accident and lost his life. And he was going to replace this vehicle. And this particular dealership in Texas failed to put the proper tag on while he was test driving it. So the police officer pulled him over and gave him a $250 fine because he needed to make sure that he had the right tag on a vehicle that he was driving, even if it was a test drive. So he's going to court to try and stop it, and fight it. And supposedly this dealership has had a history of not putting the tag on, saying dealer tag or whatever on there. And so the cops are cracking down on it. So they can't really go there and give the dealer a fine because nobody that owns the dealership is driving, it's their customer. So they're going to start ticketing the customers and
Mm,
fining them.
mm.
And there's a loophole in the law saying that if you're driving or operating a vehicle on a highway, in particular Texas, you need to make sure that the proper tag and stuff is on it. And in Texas, you got to have a tag in the front and in the back, according to this story.
Texas. I don't want to live in Texas. Anyway, well, let me get Barbara on, and I'm going to come back to you, Michael. I got a question for you. But
Okay.
come on, Barbara. Where are you?
Good morning, guys. How are you all doing?
Doing well, Barbara. How
Doing
you
well.
doing?
I'm doing good. Just tired. I had a busy weekend. So it's good to be home. I was traveling this past weekend over in Atlanta. My one of my nieces, Chloe, got engaged this weekend. Her boyfriend planned a surprise proposal for her and invited the family over for a party, and we had a fabulous time on Saturday. Needless to say, she was shocked, and but we're all so excited
So
for the
y'all
both.
knew about it, and she didn't know about it.
He knew about it. He planned it as a surprise birthday party for her, but had told me and several other family members that he was going to actually propose during the party. And she sort of found out something about something was going on, so he ended up proposing earlier in the day. But then she thought she was going to someone else's party, and the party was for her. So it was wonderful. And Chloe, all of my nieces and nephews are very close to me because I don't have kids of my own. But Chloe and Amber, who are my sister's daughters, my sister who's deceased, daughters, and so I'm really close to the two of them. So it was like my own child was getting engaged. So needless to say, I was over the moon excited about it.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good for you.
And while I was in Atlanta, I got a chance to go to see Charlie Wilson on Sunday night. So it was a fun weekend for me. I had a great time.
Charlie Wilson from the Gap Band.
From the Gap Band. Charlie Wilson is still performing. I mean, his energy level is unbelievable. I think he's 73 years old. And man, it's hard to believe that he's that age looking at him performing on that stage. He was dancing all night, had everybody in the crowd standing up on their feet. It was fun. And El DeBarge opened for him. I hadn't ever seen El DeBarge in concert before, and surprised that he was still performing and doing well. So, I think he had some problems with drugs for a while. He seems to have gotten his life back together and did an outstanding job as well. So it was fun.
Was he the one that was married to Janet Jackson?
Yeah, I think El DeBarge was married to Janet. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask you, both of you guys, something. What do you think about Cam Newton being on ESPN? I saw where he's going to be a commentator.
He is. I saw that he was on, maybe, I don't know if that was last weekend or before last. All the weeks start to run together now, but he was at a HBCU game. He and Stephen A. Smith, and I liked it. I think Cam did an excellent job. I like the idea of him being on there. He needed an opportunity. They're not going to let him play. Then he of course he knows sports backwards and forwards, and he's had a couple of shows himself on YouTube and other podcasts, and seemed to do an excellent job on that. I think he had a huge following, so I'm excited about them giving him an opportunity on ESPN.
Michael?
I'm happy for him to have the opportunity. I just wish he maybe not dressed like he's dressing from the Salvation Army or something like that. And, I kind of wish he maybe would get rid of the hat and kind of, change their image a little bit. But I guess that's why they brought him on. I understand his first appearance was on First Take with Stephen A. Smith, and they asked him a question about the Dallas Cowboys and whether they needed. And Cam started to bark on
like a dog.
Yes, he started barking on the set. And they said, and so this other guy that played football with, I can't remember the guy, he was just laughing at Cam. And, he was saying, what's the bark? And he tried to say, well, they need some dogs on there and stuff. And he continued to bark and say, that's the problem. Saying, when is somebody else on Dallas going to step up and win other than CD Lamb? And, and he would bark. And finally, though, to his credit, when he stopped the shenanigans and stopped barking and started to actually give some analysis, a lot of it made sense, So I think that if he would kind of clean his act up, because you remember when Cam was playing at Auburn and he won the Heisman, he was clean cut, very well dressed, well groomed, because he was representing Auburn University. He still represented Auburn University. His name is still going to be tied to that. And I would just my own personal opinion, I'd like to see him maybe dress a little better, get rid of the hat, and maybe cut his hair or do something like that. But hey, maybe that's why they brought him on.
Yeah,
What
I
can
think
I
so.
say?
Tom, Kim said he wants to be different. He wants to stand out in the crowd, and he said he's always been an independent person, but now that he he's older, and he said he just decided one day he's going to dress for himself, and how he wants to the world to perceive him is different, and so I think that's why he does it, and he stands out in the crowd.
We're going to go a little further because our guest today is having some trouble, and so we're waiting on Sean to let us know when she'll be available. So, you guys, I'm sure you saw the football game Auburn played this past weekend. Any comments?
My comment is we always find a way to lose. We always help the other team out.
Yeah, that seems to be part of
it.
Well, Tom, I told you I have completely disengaged in Auburn football. So I am not engaged in it. It's whatever it is, that's what it is. I will say that, on one side of it, you can look at it and say Auburn is not that far away based on the games that they've played up against top competition. And several of the games they should have won. They were ahead in the fourth quarter, but it's a situation where I think the players don't really know how to win, because coaches can put you in a position to win, but you have to execute. And a lot of the game is mental, and you've got to really have a feel for the game that you're in and staying in the moment and doing what it takes to win. There's no doubt that they have better talent, but the blame has to be laid at the feet of Coach Hugh Freeze.
Absolutely.
I find it kind of interesting that he made the comment that he just couldn't stand or stomach paying $1 million to go get a quarterback out of the portal. The thing that confuses me about that is that's what he got in trouble for at Ole Miss, was giving impermissible benefits at the time and paying players and doing all kind of stuff to entice them. So now that it's legal, you can't do it.
Right.
I mean,
right. we could have had Cam Ward. We
Yeah.
could have had Cam Ward this year. And no one, I don't understand why he put so much stock in Thorne. I still cannot understand it. There has to be something that we don't know about that's forcing him to continue to play Thorne.
Well, you mentioned Cam Ward. Look at what he's doing for Miami. And Miami does not have the talent that Auburn has.
Right.
And that was somebody that Hugh Freeze and the quarterback coach, Ken Austin, they decided they didn't want Cam Ward and basically ignored him. And then when they tried to get back in the game, it was too late and he was gone to Miami.
Right.
So I think part of being a leader is having the foresight and the vision to look down the road and figure out what you need and plan accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely correct, Michael. I did not watch the game, Tom. I'm like Michael. I'm kind of disengaged. That by now I normally would have gone to 2 or 3 games. I haven't been to a game this year, which is highly unusual. But I just can't. I can't get into it. It's just again, it's like they find a way to lose games, and it's all the coach's fault. He's responsible for getting those players motivated. He's responsible for giving them the confidence that they need to feel like they're leaders on the field. He gives it to the wrong person. And that's why Auburn. I'm sorry.
There's no doubt, in my opinion, that I think we got a pretty good defense. I think we can hang in there with most teams, but we don't have. We're very weak at the quarterback position.
Very weak.
That's just. If you know anything about football, there's certain things. Like the other day, they couldn't even call the game they wanted to call because they're afraid. Right. If he throws it down the field, it's going to be a pick six. And so I don't really understand. And at this point in time, season's done.
Yes.
I mean, we'll probably have a losing record.
Not probably.
Well, then why don't you let somebody else play?
I was going to say.
I don't.
Thorne is not going to be back next year. He's a fifth-year player, so he's definitely doesn't have any playing, time left after this year. So why not go ahead and get a player ready for the coming season?
That's a good question. Good question. You guys got anything else? We're still waiting on them, and I can go to Sean and got a minute, and then we may have to come back and do some more.
Well, I'll share this with you guys. I find it kind of interesting. There's a gentleman by the name of Rothstein. He was a frequent flyer. Back in 1981, American Airlines offered up free first class tickets for life for any individual willing to pay $250,000 on the spot. So this gentleman did this. But recently, they have revoked and canceled his lifetime flying privileges. And the reason being is the airline figured out that he's cost them $21 million.
Wow.
Over that time. And supposedly, Stephen Rothstein, he purchased it in 1987. Within 21 years, he ran up over $21 million worth of cost.
He's been flying every day, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has traveled 30 million miles.
Wow.
By 2008, 10,000 flights on American Airlines, which was free of charge. And he's gone to every country. He's a stockbroker and stuff. And so they've sued him, but they're not suing him for fraud. They're accusing him of booking seats for non-existing passengers under names such as Bag Rothstein, Stephen Rothstein Jr., and booking flights that he never planned. And he said, well, he did help out some people. He said that back in 2019, he gave a man in Seattle a ticket to go to his father's funeral. He says, I've given many people tickets to visit family members. And so he's done a lot of things to help people and everything like this. But American Airlines, once they figured out that he had cost them over $21 million, they canceled his flight in the middle of a flight and left him stranded somewhere.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Well, Michael, again, if he was told that he could purchase unlimited flights, I don't understand how they can change that. Now, how can you rescind that? If that was the purchase and that was the agreement, and if there's a signed contract somewhere, again, I don't understand how they can rescind it regardless of how much he spent. I agree. That's outlandish, the amount of money he's cost them, but they should have put some kind of stipulations in the contract from the very beginning.
Well, that's a situation where they didn't really clearly think this out. What they were trying to do was increase cash flow during a time that the airline was having a problem. Mm-hmm. So they were offering free lifetime passes for $250,000 to get a lot of cash in. They just didn't have any idea that somebody would learn how to trick the system and everything. And
now, again, explain to me how he tricked the system. He was booking tickets for other people using fictitious names.
Well, that's what they're saying. That's the deal. But many of those flights, he did them himself.
Right. Okay.
He's flown 30 million miles and stuff. And so
I don't understand how he could book a flight for someone else. They had to have an ID to get on the flight. And
maybe part of the amenities were family members or something like that could do that because, it was one person named Stephen Rothstein Jr. and somebody named Bag Rothstein and what have you. And he was in the middle of a travel day leaving. They left him stranded in Bosnia when they figured out.
Oh, wow.
Well, that wasn't right.
Not at all.
No, I mean, he lived up to his end of the bargain.
I was about to say, if he was playing by the rules, then they should play by the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just buy him out.
Right.
Give him, hey, we made this deal, but we need to go back on it. We're going to offer you such and such.
I mean, that's like, saying all you can eat for X amount of dollars and you get, somebody there that can put away some food and stuff and then come up and say, hey, no, we changed that. We rescinded that offer.
And you have to leave. You can't
stop
come back
eating.
anymore.
I could see where they might want to revise it.
You're right.
It's costing them. It's more than they ever thought. And so go in and make a deal with the guy.
Yes. They can't leave a stranger in the middle of a trip.
Everything out of it he could get.
Yes. Way more than he ever thought he could get out of that.
Right. Okay, well, let's move forward. Let's go to Sean. She's got a minute for us, and then we'll go to our G-list guest. Sean, you got a minute?
Good morning to everyone joining in with us. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Today is Tuesday, and I usually have a good idea about what I want to share with you all each week. This week was super difficult because there was so much going on this time of the year, especially because of the elections. So today I wanted to share with you all that on this day in 1994, the U.S. Justice Department announces that the U.S. prison population had topped 1 million for the first time in American history. The figure 1,012,851 men and women were in state and federal prisons, and this did not include local jails, where an estimated 500,000 prisoners were held, usually for short periods of time. The increase due to tougher sentencing laws made the U.S. second to only Russia in the world for incarceration rates at the time. Today, the U.S. has the highest incarceration rate in the world. In 1994, the vast majority of prisoners were male and behind bars on drug-related convictions. There is and was an extremely disproportionate number of African Americans behind bars. This racial imbalance was also present in the 2,890 prisoners under death sentences during that time. 42% of the prisoners on death row were African American. Please, please, please go out and vote. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this has Got a Minute.
So our G-list guest today is Dr. Kimberly Patton. In honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we are excited to welcome Dr. Kimberly Leslie-Patton as our G-list guest. She's a breast cancer thriver, and I'll let her explain that. Dr. Patton will share her powerful story, discuss key things to watch for, and offer invaluable advice on how to advocate for yourself and others. Let's welcome Dr. Kimberly Leslie-Patton, please.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Morning.
I'm well, thank you.
Good deal. Well, I'm sorry. My wife told me you had a death in the family this weekend. We're sorry about that.
Thank you. We've actually had two. Yesterday when I arrived to help plan that funeral, I found out my godson had gotten killed. So this is a week, but that's what going through cancer will help you learn, to take each day and make the best of it.
Well, tell us about going through cancer, if you.
Well, in 1999, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in December, the Wednesday before Christmas. Christmas was Sunday. But prior to that diagnosis, my husband, Ralph Patton, was in a car accident in May. And so we had lived in 4 hospitals in 2 states from May 22nd until December 21. And I started to actually not have a lot of energy. And anybody who knew me knew I was just a very energetic person. And that morning when I went to the doctor, I went because my energy was down. And Dr. George Pitts, who is now deceased, listened to me for about 30 minutes before he even had me to go undress. And I went back and he sent me to a mammogram. And I could tell something was wrong based on how the young lady's body language was. And so that Wednesday, they told me to come back on Monday. Christmas was Sunday. We went to the doctor and I got the diagnosis that day. And that doctor said that he had diagnosed a lot of people over the 20, I think 4 years that he had been practicing. And he said he never experienced me. And I said, well, doc, you have to realize just this year, I saw death come, but it left. My husband learned to read, write, walk, and talk and drive again after I had cancer. But the point was, every day we were faced with a death sentence. And regardless of what the results looked like, I kept speaking, he will live and not die and declare the works of the Lord. And then it happened to me. And I had to take that same faith and believe that I too would live in spite of every negative report that I could get in that 7-month period.
Barbara, would you like to ask a question? Let me say one thing. I do remember when Ralph had his accident, and I remember going to the hospital and seeing him, and we just grinned when we saw each other. And I held his hand, or he held my hand, one or the other. And it was pretty remarkable. And then for you to come behind that was yeah. Barbara, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Patton, and thank you for joining us this morning. And my condolences to you and the loss of your loved ones.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you about your diagnosis, and you said that you were just run down, tired, and of course that's explainable after what you were dealing with your husband. But were there other symptoms? I've heard so many times people saying that they had chest pain, or they noticed something different about. There were no other symptoms that you had.
Absolutely none. And that's the
Wow.
scary part, because oftentimes cancer does not hurt, especially something like breast cancer, unless you got, the knots or whatever that are growing rapidly. But there were no symptoms other than I did not have the energy that I was typically used to having.
And if you don't mind me asking, what age were you when you were diagnosed?
34, with no family history.
Wow.
And the only sickness I had ever had was sinusitis and tonsillitis. So imagine going to a doctor to find out you have cancer when all you've ever suffered was, sinusitis.
Absolutely. And at that age, at age 34, you're not even the age range where they're suggesting you have a mammogram every year. So at that point, you probably had never even had a mammogram. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. And when you're young, it typically is more aggressive. So I ended up being diagnosed with 2 types of breast cancer, in the duct and outside, at 34 years old. And so I went through my mind, I never drank, I never smoked, never did drugs, wasn't overweight, didn't have a family history. And the Spirit of the Lord said to me, don't give me your resume. I know what you did and didn't do. This is not about you. And on that day, Miss Barbara, I could not even take myself to the restroom. Wow. That day, I sat up in the bed. I looked up and went, oh, my God, forgive me for pride. Because prior to then, I never knew that I was in pride about what I had and hadn't done. God can take what the enemy means for evil and use for your good. So I'm delighted to be a thriver. I decided I'm just not surviving. I thrive every day despite what occurs or happens to me and to the people that I love and are in my corner each day.
Absolutely. Thank you for your outlook. That's remarkable.
Yeah. And I think you have to be positive if you're going to get through cancer or any kind of challenge in life, because I had seen my husband overcome death many, many days. And I had decided, God, you delivered him. You're going to deliver me. I didn't know the day, didn't know the hour, didn't know the time, but I believed that I would live and not die in spite of what I was going through.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if you don't mind me asking, what was the treatment plan that the doctors recommended for you?
I had chemo, 6 rounds of chemo every 3 weeks originally. And then after 4 weeks, I had it every week for 6 months. Okay. And then when I got up, we went to Zurich and Milan, and we kind of traveled the world for a minute, even with him in a wheelchair. Yes. And I could barely get him around, but I was just determined that we were going to live.
Yes.
Michael?
Well, good morning, Dr. Patton. Thanks for visiting with us and sharing your inspiring story. I too would like to offer my condolences to you for the loss of your loved ones.
Thank you, Michael.
In addition to that, I'd like to say that your mental toughness and intestinal fortitude is one to behold. And I think a lot of people can learn from your mental attitude that you have. You know, uh, it would be interesting to see if you were to do a book and put this all in writing for people to read about the struggles that you and your family have been through and how you came out on the other side and you were able to maintain your strength and mental sanity. Um, did they tell you what could have caused your breast cancer, given the fact you had no history or anything?
No, they couldn't determine that at the time. But some of the things they talked about was vitamin D deficiency in African American women was associated with breast cancer. And I used to travel a lot. So I was an auditor before I came to Birmingham, and I traveled 90% of the time. So at one time, they were saying that excessive flying could have been, a contributing factor, but they could not, pinpoint anything. So I had to live with the fact that I don't know what it was, but I'm going to have to make the best of each day. So diet and nutrition, Michael, is what I really focused on in changing, in that a lot of people die from malnutrition, not cancer. That's what happened to my father too. So I realized early I'm going to have to eat right, manage stress. The other thing they did mention was stress related illness could have been a factor. But oftentimes with African American women, we don't even realize we're stressed. We just go through life. We do what we have to do. We serve everybody, and we try to stay, I guess, focused so that we can live again to get up tomorrow and try it all over again. I'm also an active shooter incident survivor, thriver. And so when I tell you that the things that happen in life, you just got to keep using it to teach yourself and teach others about staying focused and living in spite of what comes against you, because all of us go through things. I didn't expect to be planning 2 funerals in 1 week, but it happened. I can't undo it. So what can I do to make things better for those that are involved in my life? And so I would say to people who are diagnosed with cancer to listen to what they're telling you in terms of rest, water, hydration. We often are dehydrated. That's not good. We're often not eating the proper fruits, vegetables, taking supplementation to live. And so I believe that, along with prayer and just having people in my life to help me get through, made the difference. God is real, and he will answer the prayers that we pray. He can't answer what we don't ask for, but when we ask in faith, believing, it happens. So I hear you about the book, and I do need to do that, Michael. So thanks for the reminder.
Well, good, good. If you don't mind, just for a minute, could we pivot? And what I mean by pivot, breast cancer is not only limited to just women. I know we always think of women having breast cancer, because it's more of that, but
Mhm.
it can exist in men as well, can it not?
It
Yeah.
can. And we do need to remind people to get screened, because it's happening earlier and earlier now, especially with young women, but also with men. And so if any changes are occurring in your body, you do need to see a physician. And oftentimes people are leery of and afraid of going to the doctor. And so it's very important that we make a commitment to ourselves to live, get screening early, and then take the proper precautions to follow a work plan that's going to help you to live and not die.
I think for men, um, Richard Roundtree was a good example. You know,
Mhm.
he was Shaft, and he was tough, and he was the guy, and so on and so forth. And then when it was revealed that he had breast cancer, it was like, oh, how can that be? You know,
Right.
that's Shaft, man. He
Mhm.
didn't, you know, and
Mhm.
of course he's passed now. I don't know if
Mhm.
he
I
passed now,
remember that.
but
Mhm.
yeah, that was quite a revelation. So, Barbara, you got anything else?
I do. Dr. Patton, we know that breast cancer is the most common cancer diagnosed among women in the U.S. And something that you mentioned, diet, exercise, nutrition, those things are just not focused on a lot. And my doctors never really talked to me about that. Maybe it's because they figure, I'm small already, so you don't have to worry about that. But it doesn't matter the size of a person. Um, you mentioned vitamin D deficiency and how that could be a cause of breast cancer. That's something that I've never heard before. Again, I don't know why are the doctors not talking about this? Why are people not educating the masses about this more?
You're
Um,
you're so right, Miss Barbara. But we have to ask questions
mhm.
too.
Yes,
And as a crisis consultant, I asked a lot of questions of my physicians,
right.
and I asked for a nutrition consult. So then I found out the things that were actually feeding the cancer. So you do need to ask,
Mhm.
like,
Yes,
hey, what vitamins do I need to take or not take? What food do I need to eat or not eat? Because iron was feeding the cancer. If I hadn't have been asking for that, they may not have told me that.
right.
And so, like now, I go to dance class, I walk, I try to eat nutritionally balanced meals daily to live
Right.
and to drink the water. We don't realize dehydration can kill you.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
oftentimes, as in the African American community, we drink a lot of sodas and sugary things,
Hmm.
and it's killing us.
Right.
If you did the research just on the impact of deaths due to sugary drinks, you'd be amazed.
Right.
So we got to educate ourselves. When others don't, we must.
I agree. Thank you. Yeah, there's documentation that says basically sugar causes cancer, and again, but that's not anything that if you're not searching for it, you won't find that. It's not anything that's just out there spread just for the masses to see. You have to go and search and find that information.
Yeah, but we have to talk. We have to encourage one another. I
Yes.
actually volunteered when I was after I got over cancer back at the hospital for about 10 years. They would call me in when young people were diagnosed to actually do coaching with them because they said my attitude was just so positive in
Yes.
spite of what I was going through. I didn't let it, get me down where I felt like I couldn't. I decided every day I would live and not die and declare the works of the Lord. And He allowed me to do
Absolutely.
that. So you guys were talking earlier, Shantia talked about prison. Like I used to preach on death row. So I know that when you have something to live for, but all of us better have something that we're willing to wake up every day to fight to live,
Yes.
because life can give you some blows that you'll lay down and die.
Right.
Mhm.
Wow. Thank
Kim,
you for your story.
I know you were involved, and I can't think of the name of it. I was looking for you guys were involved with what do you call it? A recidivism, a program with prisoners, helping them when they get out to not go back. What can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, sir. That's called the Dannon Project. And Dannon Pruitt is J.J. Pruitt from Fox 6, brother who died on his way home from school. And Carrie, my sister, and Jay created this organization, the Dannon Project, which is now world renowned for helping people who come out of prison to get their lives on track. They do the mental health counseling, they help with food, clothing, shelter, they help reprogram the attitude, the mind to want to stay focused on living outside the four walls and to reunite with their families. So they get the training they need, whether it's certifications to do plumbing, electrical work, warehouse work, Many work in different places across various states because they've worked in South Carolina, they've worked in the Virgin Islands, they've worked in Alabama to help people who come from prison to get their lives on track. And they're one of the number one agencies in the nation to assist people to come out, get employed, and then never go back. And they've worked under 3 different presidents to do that. And Kerry is now in DC, speaking to the Department of Energy and Transportation. They've just been awarded a new contract to train people in the Southeast on the electrical battery. They'll be training people to do the electric vehicle batteries. So we're excited about that. We're breaking barriers, but we all got to have compassion in this nation to care about others as well as we care about ourselves. Because, with this political climate, things like having insurance or not, it matters. And it's going to be the difference in life and death. And if we don't care about those who have already made mistakes and get them reunited, rejuvenated back to life to do well and not evil, we're all going to suffer. So it matters. And we all need to be part of the solution versus the problem.
Okay, anybody got any other questions?
Yes. Kimberly, could you tell us a little bit about your work with the maternal and child health community and HRSA Health Resources and Service Administration and what that involves?
Yes, I have been a consultant for HRSA for over 30 years, and I'm a training technical assistance consultant. So we work with a lot of programs, whether it's moms who have babies who die before their first birthday, which is infant mortality. I've worked there with Birmingham Healthy Start for 29 years in helping educate the community about moms who need proper nutrition. They need proper education, proper medical care to have healthy babies. And as a nation, the nation spends a lot of money on trying to help once the problems have occurred. But we as communities need to help with the prevention, with the education before the problems occur. So I've worked with probably over 300 agencies across the U.S. and the Virgin Islands in assisting programs that had issues of non-compliance to bring them back into compliance. So I'm one of the consultants that they use across the nation when there are problems with programs they funded to assist moms and babies.
Okay.
Kim, let me ask you: is how much of a, I guess, chance, I don't know the right word, that your breast cancer could return? What's the percentages there? What happened?
Okay, so they told me if I didn't take chemo, I had a 75% chance that it would return. And my mother and my sister, and at that time, Ralph couldn't even really help me because he was recovering himself. So they helped to make the decision. We want you to live. You're only 34. We're going for the chemo. Back then, Tom, chemo was very severe. And so for people who are going through chemo, they need to know to ask, are you giving me the best anti-nausea medicine you can give me? Because what we found out, sometimes African Americans don't get offered the same medications that others do. We also found out at the time the pill that I needed was $66 a pill. They didn't offer it to me. I asked for it. And they said, well, we didn't offer it because it was so high. Well, and my mother, who just recently passed, I took off work the last 3 years to care for her. But my mother let them know, we didn't ask you to make decisions for us. We asked you to give us our best options. So don't withhold information based on cost when you don't know what our financial situation is. But that $66 pill per pill was worth it, because by the time I would get the chemo, and I was allergic, guys, to the chemo. Believe that. But that $66 a pill helped me to live, I think, because I wasn't as sick as I would have been had I been taking the weak drug they were giving me without giving me a choice. And one of my friends who had had cancer 6 times was the one who told me, no, you ask them for Zofran, because chances are they're not going to offer it. And they didn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, Dr. Patton, in your response to the question that was asked, you just touched on the disparity in healthcare in the African American community. And people that are not subjected to that, they don't understand that. And when an African American talks about inequality, disparity in healthcare, injustice, and throughout the country, they do not believe it. They think we're crying wolf, but you have lived it like many of us. And it's hard to get people to see that because they don't experience it themselves.
Exactly. And if we don't know the questions to ask, it makes it even more difficult because then we're subjected to less than care. And I don't even think in some cases that it's intentional, but unintentional death is still death for me.
Right.
So what I don't know can kill me. So I'm inquisitive enough to ask people, what's going on? How did this work? How did you know? What happened? What were the signs? What were the symptoms? And then talk to these providers, because it may not be that they're intentionally not telling us. They don't think sometimes like we think. So therefore they leave information out.
Yeah, I hear you saying that, but as a professional, your job is to communicate with your client, to let them know all the options. In my practice, when I'm going to talk to people about their Medicare plan, especially seniors, I explain all the options available to them and what the advantages or disadvantages are, and help them make a decision because they do not do the work I do. The same with you. You didn't go to med school. You're depending on them to educate you and consult with you as they treat you.
Mhm.
And for them not to do that, in my opinion, is inexcusable and it borders on malpractice.
I
It
totally agree.
right.
However, I know from living experience, it happens every day.
Yes.
And the lack of awareness can help lead us to the grave faster. And so
Absolutely.
we got to educate one another, talk to one another, and care enough to help others live by helping them be informed to talk to the physician who may malpractice intentionally or not against us
Mhm.
because they don't think like we think.
And it's sad that the patient has to be their own advocate, and if they're not available to do that or able to do that because of their illness, they definitely need a family member, a friend, or something to be their advocate and speak for them on their behalf. Because again, if you don't demand or ask the right questions, Dr. Patton's correct. You just don't get the proper treatment. You don't get all the answers because again, either the doctors feel they don't need to share it, they forget to share it, or they think it does not apply to you for
Or
whatever reason.
or they think you can't afford it, or that they
Right.
make an
Mm-hmm.
assumption
Mm-hmm.
based on their knowledge
Mhm.
of people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, their knowledge of people of color is very limited.
That's
It's
right.
based on all black people eat mullet, right?
Right.
It's,
Right.
it's
Right.
based on something like that
Right.
they've gone, their experience has been limited in that
Right.
arena.
But
And
I
Dr.
would have
Patton,
paid for that $66 pill with everything that I had. And
absolutely.
so when you mention about family support, my sister had to take my checkbook, my credit card, and everything to help make sure that everything was paid properly. Because once you start chemo, some chemos will have you where you can't think clearly.
Right.
And Ralph couldn't help me because he was learning to read, write, walk, talk, and drive again.
Yeah. And Dr. Penn, you touched on something I think that's important from the very beginning. You mentioned Dr. Pitts, who I think was an African-American doctor. Had she gone to someone else and told them the same thing, I'm just tired and run down, they probably would have never checked. You know,
well, let
if
me
it was breast
explain, Ms.
cancer.
Barbara.
Please.
I actually went to 2 other doctors before Dr. Pitts.
Right.
Both doctors diagnosed me with depression, and I would not take the medicine. So had I taken the medicine, chances are I would not be here today with you guys
Absolutely.
to
Right.
talk about this.
Right.
But because I knew I wasn't depressed, I
Right.
went to the next one, and the third one worked for me.
Yes, thank
And
God.
before and I told him I had been to 2. They say I'm depressed. I'm not depressed. I need
Right.
help. Something's
Right.
wrong.
Right.
He listened to me, Miss Barbara, before he had me to undress. That 30-minute consult probably saved my
Saved
life.
your life. Yes.
But just
Absolutely.
imagine had I taken the, oh, you're depressed, take these pills and come back to see us. I probably wouldn't be here.
So true.
And so it's important that we listen to our bodies. Know your body. If something is not right, go ask somebody, hey, look at this. If you don't like that, go find somebody else.
Right.
Let them give you a second opinion.
Absolutely. And a third if you have to.
Exactly, because the third one worked for me. Father,
Yes.
Son, the Holy Spirit, it'll work if you work
Absolutely.
it. The one thing I've learned in life is that the word will work 100% of the time if you work it. Nothing else in life will work at that degree of accuracy.
Yes.
So even with the best professionals, there's room for error. So you give grace and mercy to keep looking until you get the answers you need to live, because it matters.
It
And
does.
each of our lives really matter. We need to stay here as long as we can to fulfill his purpose and plans for our lives to help others. And it's always for good.
Okay, anything else from anybody?
I just want to echo what Michael said. Thank you so much, Dr. Patton, for joining us this morning. And your story is so inspirational. You truly are a walking testimony. And like Michael said, you need to write that book.
Thank you. I'll work on that.
Okay.
And I want the first signed copy since it was my idea.
Okay. We'll do that.
Yeah, we want to thank you so much for being with us, and thank Ralph as well. I talked to him, I guess it was 3 weeks ago. He was going, I think, to Tennessee somewhere, and we chatted for a few minutes. Well, maybe it's longer than that, but
yeah, we both lost our mothers in the last 6 months.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's real tough. It's tough. Anything else from anybody? Kim, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate it, and some great advice there. So,
thank you for having me.
well, thank you. Okay. Anybody got anything else? All right. Well, let's move on. Thank you. So my closing comment, or for today, or as I see it, speaking of voting in history, President Jimmy Carter, who is 100 years old, voted last week for the Democratic nominee Kamala Harris for president. James Earl Carter Jr., an American politician and humanitarian, served as the 39th president of the United States from 1977 to 1981. He was a member of the Democratic Party. He served as a member of the Georgia State Senate from 63 to 67 and was the 76th governor of Georgia from 1971 to 1975. 100 years old. We certainly wish him the best. He's been a great humanitarian for the state of Georgia, for the country, and we wish him the best. And that's our show for today. I want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. Thank our G-List guests. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thanks again to the TWT team, Barbara, Sean, Emily, Michael, and Joyce. And that's it for this October 22nd. Remember, a day without a smile is a day wasted. If you've got an extra one, give one to someone else today. Enjoy yourself. Make every day count, as Dr. Patton says. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.